David, known as Mr. Cashflow, I like that, David, has been involved in the business of medicine and dentistry for over 40 years. His experience includes 10 years as a practice administrator, COO of a medical billing company, and years of consulting, speaking, and educating. The CEO of Cashflow Strategies, David has worked to assist practices and businesses across the US to maximize their cash flow and become more efficient. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thanks so much, Doc. I couldn't have written that better myself.
Hey, I think we know somebody who did that. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here and excited to talk about this topic. So, a place where I like to begin is kind of a little background in kind of how the company got going. So, cash flow strategies and getting it started, but also maybe anything you might want to share as to kind of what drives you, what matters to you personally about this work that you're contributing.
Well, I have worked with doctors and dentists pretty much all of my life. My father was a CPA and only worked with medical and dental practices. I ran a practice between 1980 and 1989 and have been doing medical and dental consulting ever since then. Cash flow strategies kind of happened as a result of talking to a bunch of my clients who were saying, you know what, I'm not making any money anymore. I'm working as hard as I can work. I'm seeing as many patients as I can see, but the money's not there. What gives? And so when I dug into it a little bit deeper, I realized that their problem wasn't revenue. They had plenty of revenue. Their problem was cash flow, and they didn't understand it, and they didn't know what to do about it. And so I began to focus my consulting around cash flow. And after a year or so of unsuccessfully trying to refer them to people who did the things that could help their cash flow, I said, you know what, they'll talk to me. So I just became all of those people. And I signed independent contractor agreements with a bunch of different companies, all of whom could help them. And then I started Cash Flow Strategies as kind of the organizing deal for all of that, and began doing what I call the cash flow checkup for practices, where in about a half an hour, I can interview them. You know, I have a heart for docs and dentists because I get personally annoyed when people say, oh, he's a doctor, he doesn't need my money. You know, that gets me personally because I know so many doctors and I've worked with so many doctors. And so the idea of just being able to help them in an area where they can practice dentistry, I'll help their office become profitable. And I love doing that. And so that's what I do from day to day.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it is interesting, that perspective that, oh, you're a doctor, you don't need my money, as though there's not a lot of expense in running this business. And to assume that everybody who's come out of school has been so informed about business success overall that that's even going to be the result. So
I can't tell you how many times I've seen doctors say, man, they just didn't teach you that in dental school.
Yeah. I like that approach. I think the understanding of cash flow versus just how much production, how much money are we taking in.
Exactly.
I think that is an important concept. So, I mean, what are you seeing then as kind of primary problems that are resulting in cash flow issues then?
Well, patient collections is a huge issue. Their accounts receivable is the largest asset they own. In most cases, it's bigger than their office, it's bigger than their car or their house or whatever. And so most practices don't have a handle on it. And so I help them, first of all, establish an effective and compliant patient financial policy. And I teach them what needs to be in your financial policy. You wouldn't believe what I've seen out there. I see practices every day that either are using a 10 or 12-year-old patient financial policy, or they don't have one at all in writing for a patient to sign. And so they have no bedrock that they can stand on. And so I'll help them create one that is complete and compliant, there's a lot of stuff in there from years ago that isn't even legal anymore,
Mhm.
and they don't know what it is. So
Mhm.
that's where we start with the financial policy. I can help their staff do better at collecting from patients. I can show them ways to do collections without having to pay 30, 40, 50% of what they get from a standard collection agency. And that's one of the big areas. Other areas, they're overspending on things. They're overspending on their credit card processing and they don't even know it.
Mm.
They're overspending on their HIPAA compliance and they don't know it.
Mm.
And I got involved in cost segregation, which has to do with real estate because I have a few doctors that bought their office building. And I learned this is a great way to save them a lot of money on their taxes.
Mm.
And so I got involved in cost segregation. I have a dentist in town that bought an old Wells Fargo bank branch and put his practice in it. And I was able to get him over $200,000 in additional depreciation through doing a study of his building. So, and his tax attorney was not even aware of the fact that he could use this against his practice income. So, in just hanging with them and taking a look all around and kind of snooping around in their practice, I could show them about 4 or 5 ways that they can cut their expenses or increase their income and help their cash flow.
That's great. Do you tend to find any one of those? I mean, you mentioned first as far as, how much money is not getting collected. Is that where you typically find the biggest target for
By
improvement?
far.
The easiest way to turn something around from a cash flow perspective?
By far, because it's happening every day.
Yeah.
You know, there are insurance companies that will totally ignore you. And if you call the insurance company, you get put on hold while you listen to elevator music and they pretend to look up your claim. There are ways to speed up the insurance companies. There are ways to speed up patient payments. There are definitely ways to talk to patients about money that will help you collect the most. And then there are options when it comes to when you have to use collections. There are some very good options out there that aren't going to cost you all of your profit margin. And so, yeah, that's the biggest problem I encounter both in the medical world and the dental world when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And I'm thinking that just communication. I mean, I like the fact that you're looking at financial agreements and things like that probably, if the doctor's been in practice for some time, probably have not considered making any upgrades to that. It's like probably the last thing they would think of, I would imagine.
Well, I work with a lot of oral surgery practices, and at one of their conferences where I was a speaker, I ran into, and I don't even remember the name of the company, so that's fine. But what this company does is they will put your financial policies and things on your website so that patients can look at them. They write them for you, and frankly, they are terrible.
Ah,
And I went to the guy and I said, "Hey, let me write a financial policy for you to use." And he said, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Let's talk. Contact me after the conference." And I did and never got a response.
interesting.
So, so, you're better off knowing what needs to be in there, making it complete and cover every eventuality that you can think of. And then if you're working with a company like that, tell them, no, I want to use mine, upload that to your website. But they're handing papers out to patients. They're supposed to read them and sign them. Normally they don't read them, but if they sign them, they're still responsible for what's in it.
Right.
And
Right.
you want to make sure that everything is covered so that your staff can stand on that and say, our policy is this,
Right.
and we gave it to you and you signed it and
Right.
that's it.
Yeah. And before we even get to that, right, to having to hold somebody accountable to hopefully something that they did sign that is reasonably appropriate, uh, how much of a problem do you think is just the lack of good communication about finances to patients, or the lack maybe throughout the entire practice from doctor communications about the value of what's being delivered? to how the front office is managing, um, what the costs are going to be and what they're going to be responsible for. How much of that do you see as the problem, and which of those things do you think is falling mostly, uh, into an abyss, I guess?
I think it's mostly the communication between the staff and the patient about expectations, because the staff is not well trained in expectations. They don't know the financial policy to stand on when they communicate with the patient. And in a lot of cases, they're afraid to communicate with the patient about money. People just don't like talking about money. One of the cardinal rules I have when I train a staff is, from now on, the doctor never, ever, ever talks to the patient about money, because God love them, doctors have a big heart. And it's so easy to say in the moment, don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. We'll work something out. You don't have to worry about that. And that goes completely against what we're trying to establish in the mission of this.
Right.
Those things are probably the biggest ones that we run into as far as communication goes.
Wow.
And also the doctor communicating to the staff what he expects as far as spending and those kinds of things, and how the whole collections process is to go. In a lot of cases, I go in and I will show them, from the day you receive the EOB, here's what happens. Day 1, this happens. Day 7, this happens. Day 30, this happens, and on and on and on and on. And it's very regimented, and it always is the same. And it seems to work. We're collecting the practices a lot more money.
That's great. That's great. How much of it do you feel like is confusion or ambiguity around the whole insurance for all the practices that are engaging insurance? Whose responsibility is going to be what, not being certain always how much the patient is, what their part's going to be? How much do you think the front office gets snagged into that as being part of the trouble?
They do, and part of that is communication with the patient as well, because they're getting calls from people saying, no, 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 I don't know that balance. My insurance was supposed to pay that. Well, they need to communicate up front with the patient that your insurance pays what your insurance pays, and if they don't pay, you're responsible for every bit of it, and then how to work with the insurance companies to get the most money out of them. It's a matter of education, and they just have to say, no, our policy is what the insurance doesn't pay, you're responsible for.
Yeah, that's good. So of these various things that you see and can address through cash flow strategies, you mentioned in the beginning that you have a process. You have kind of I don't know if you said a checklist or
It's a checkup.
Checkup, yes. So how is it that you're going about clarifying where these biggest issues are and where to begin to focus?
Basically, I will do, and the checkup is absolutely free.
Okay.
I will spend a half an hour or so on the phone with either the doctor, the office manager, the practice manager, or both. Both is best if I can get them both in one room at a time and talk to them. And basically, I'm just going to ask them questions about a whole bunch of different things. And then I can get a feel of where we need to probe a little bit deeper. They will never pay me anything unless they want me to write their financial policy. I wrote about 24 financial policies last year because I can tell them what needs to be in it, and they say, yeah, but I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
So I'll write it for them, based on what their answers are on a number of different questions. But other than that, they never pay me anything. If I get them involved with a certain company that can help them with their HIPAA or their whatever, they pay that company. And I'm an independent contractor with that company. I'll either make a referral fee or something like that, but that's good enough for me.
Okay.
I'm not trying to take extra money away from the doctor. We're trying to help him get more.
Right. So for those that are listening to us right now who say, yeah, I don't think I've adequately addressed, I think I've got some cash flow problems. And yes, I'm working harder and I'm not fully getting what I think I deserve out of this hard of work, and maybe are not sure about their financial policies and plan and all that. If they want to connect with you or to learn more about what you have to offer, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way for them to do that is to just give me a call. I can give my number if you like.
Sure.
It's 770-367-8091 or 770-224-8504. Either one will get to me.
Okay.
You can text at both of those if you prefer to text, or they can email me at david.wiener, Wiener, at cashflowstrategies.us. That's the name of my website as well. They can go there. Lots of ways to get in touch with me, and I'll make this deal for your viewers. If you like, you can email me your patient financial policy. I'll review it. I'll make some notes. I'll send it back to you, and that's kind of the way that we can get introduced.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate that offer. That's kind of you, and I'm thinking that will be some people who will want to take you up on that.
Hope so.
Yeah,
I have the heart of a teacher, and so I love teaching people about all of these things, and that's what I do.
that's great.
I'm 68 years old. My wife says, "You're never going to retire, are you?" And I said, "Why would I retire? I absolutely love what I do every day."
Yeah.
And I
Well,
love working with doctors and dentists.
yeah, that's great. Well, I'm with you on that as well. And as far as that sentiment around loving what I do every day as well. And yeah, what would we be rushing off to retire when it's that good as it is?
Well, one of my favorite things is I travel all over the country all year long, speaking on different topics. They say most people are afraid of death and public speaking. That's number one and number two.
Mhm.
I absolutely love public speaking. So I'll go anywhere and tell my story and teach them about things, and I love to do it.
That's great. Well, I certainly appreciate your time today and coming on and sharing with us about what I agree with you is an important topic for the sake of the business success of every practice at the highest level so that they can keep caring for their patients, caring for their team members. And so thank you for all that you're doing.
Absolutely my pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So for everybody, this is Matthew Norton. This is the Truth Behind Dentistry podcast with David Wiener of Cashflow Strategies. And thank you for being with us. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.